right, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for our 2022 CAL FIRE Wildfire County Coordinator Northern Grant Program Workshop. My name is Nina Evans. I believe I know most folks on the call, but for anyone who I haven't met before, I am a staff grant specialist here at CFFC, and I am the grant specialist for the County Coordinator Grant and folks in CAL FIRE Southern Region. So I'll be leading us through our presentation this afternoon. We also have a few other CFFC staff on the call that are going to introduce themselves in a moment here. And while we have staff introducing themselves, please go ahead and also introduce yourself and your organization in the chat, just for folks to see who we have in the room with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Julia.
Hi, everyone. I know most of you on the call and have worked really closely with you through the first county coordinator grant program. So I'm super excited to be now launching the second round of funding for our county coordinators in CAL FIRE's Northern Region. You all were most of you were the pilot for this program, and I can't thank you enough for all of the hard work and dedication and incredible outcomes that you've all achieved through the first round of funding. So excited to see what you can do through the rest of the year. I am the interim clearinghouse manager / still a grant specialist in some capacity. So happy to hand the reins over to Nina and Dave and Becky for most of your grant management for this grant program. Some of you might still have me popping in or leading the management of your grant. So excited to see you all here.
All right, Dave or Becky, either of you want to jump in?
All right, I'll go. Dave Farley, Senior Grant Specialist. Nice to see a bunch of familiar faces on the call, and I'm looking forward to working with those that I haven't before and continuing to work with those that I have in the past. How awkward was that? Becky, your turn.
I'll probably be able to one-up you, Dave. Becky DeForest with the California Fire Safe Council. I'm a staff grant specialist and just excited to support this program and see what you guys can do in the next several months with your projects. So welcome, everyone.
All right, awesome. Thank you both, and thank you, Julia. All right, so as Julia just kind of covered, she has stepped into our interim clearinghouse manager role here at CFFC. With that being said, it means that some of your county coordinator grants will be distributed amongst the other grant specialists here at CFFC, such as Dave or Becky, or Julia might also still be your grant specialist moving forward. As part of our grants clearinghouse team, we also have myself and Morgan Galliano, who is our senior grant specialist who works mostly with our federal grants here. And we'll all be a resource if you have any questions relating to your grant program and project. And then these are the contacts for our program and outreach team. We have Jessica Martinez, who is our program director, Becca Joyner, who is our programs and outreach manager, Fabiola Garcia Lopez, who is our programs administrative assistant, Brittany Munoz, who is our Southern California regional coordinator, and Megan Kadich, who is our communications and outreach assistant. We have recently had an update here at CFFC for folks who may not be aware, but Brooke McAllister, who was our previous Northern and Central regional coordinator, has moved on from CFFC. And so if you have any questions that you had previously directed to Brooke, please go ahead and reach out to your grant specialist and we can help get those sent out to proper parties. All right, in our meeting this afternoon, we're going to do a handbook walkthrough. I know folks don't have their handbooks just yet, but we will be sending those out pretty soon. They're in the process of being finalized. And the 2022 CAL FIRE Wildfire County Coordinator Northern Grant Program Handbook is a detailed extension of the information found in your subaward agreement. And as I mentioned, we'll be giving you an overview of the information found in that handbook today. Here is our agenda. It's broken out into two main parts, project implementation and grant management. And then here at the end, we'll have some resources to share as well as some time for questions and answers. Please also feel free to add any questions you might have into the chat, and we will either answer them at the end or address them in the chat as well. And then in part one, we're going to be covering the grant cycle, roles and responsibilities, and the subaward agreement. So this diagram may look familiar to some folks. We utilize it across all of our grant programs here at CFFC. This diagram shows the way that grants are structured into phases, or the grant life cycle. As recipients of the 2022 Wildfire County Coordinator Program Northern Region Grant, you are now in the post-award phase, where you are reviewing and signing your subaward agreement with CFFC. And then throughout the duration of your grant projects, you will be in the monitoring phase, where you will be completing your grant project deliverables, expected outcomes, taking any necessary photo documentation, submitting source documentation, and submitting your quarterly progress reports. And then here we have the roles and responsibilities of the grant projects. So you, as the subrecipient, are responsible for carrying out the subgrant project that's been approved in your applications with the funding from the pass-through entity, which is CFFC. And then here is a quick list of some subrecipient responsibilities, but to complete your project as described in your approved grant application, to spend your grant funds correctly, document all your expenses and submit that source documentation to your grant specialist, report your accomplishments in your progress reports and your closeout report down the line as accurately and completely and on time, and then taking any photo documentation throughout the grant term. So some folks may have already received their subawards, but just to quickly review them here, the subaward agreement is considered fully executed upon signature and approval by an authorized representative of the California Fire Safe Council. Through the grant term, this subaward will be referenced, and it is important that you familiarize yourself with it. The term of this subaward agreement is from April 15th to December 31st, 2024. CFFC has requested a master grant extension from CAL FIRE that would allow for an extension past December of 2024, but currently no final decisions on this item have been made. We are hoping to have that extension in place, but this is the current term that we are working with for this project. And as a reminder, failure by the subrecipient to comply with the terms of the subaward agreement may result in the termination of your subaward. But here at CFFC, we have our grant specialists to help answer any questions or concerns you may have throughout the grant program. And we really are here to help support the successful completion of your project. So if you have any questions, please always feel free to reach out. Here is a quick list of some reasons that grants can be terminated: misuse of funds, lack of capacity, falsification of any data reported, non-performance, misrepresentation, non-adherence of the grant terms outlined in your subaward agreement and handbook, inability to perform, and fraud. Here we have some important subaward reminders that are also outlined in the subaward document, but ground disturbing work is not allowed under the terms of this county coordinator grant program. Equipment is also not allowed under the terms of the program, and so these costs are unallowable. And to reach out to your grant specialist if you have any questions regarding the subaward agreement, allowable costs, and such. If you need to modify your project budget or any deliverables, outcomes, scope of work, please also contact your grant specialist and we can help walk you through the CFFC modification request process. Alrighty, into part two, we'll be going over grant management of your county coordinator grant project. So we'll be going over reporting, payment requests, source documentation, grant project modifications, public statements, and the closeout process. As in your previous county coordinator grant program, and for folks who are newer to this grant project as well, there will be quarterly progress reports due. And in these progress reports, you will be reporting on work plan progress, identifying the tasks and activities that have been accomplished during the quarter, and discussing any successes or challenges that you've experienced. These reports help county coordinators keep track of the progress of their project and also helps keep CFFC updated. We'll also be collecting deliverables and metrics data, so how many communities you've engaged, how many events you posted, as well as collecting information on the deliverables that are outlined in your subaward agreement and the grant management handbook, which we're going to go over in just a couple slides, or in just the next slide here. These values are numerical data that CFFC collects for our records and can be shared with our stakeholders and partners. And an update, or sorry, not an update, but something that CFFC is now implementing is that we are going to be requesting source documentation for the expenses reported on in the quarter. And I'll be covering this under source documentation, but essentially we are going to start requesting the source documentations quarterly. So that way, when it comes time for your next advance payments, you won't have to submit source documentation for half of your award amount. And hopefully this streamlines the process for both yourselves and for the grant specialists. And these are the deliverables that I just previously mentioned. These were also covered in the application webinar, and these are outlined in the award handbook. These are the deliverables for folks in the Northern Region County Coordinator Grant Program, and we'll go over them pretty quickly here. But to participate in monthly county coordinator meetings with CFFC staff and other funded county coordinators, identify, summarize, and report on local groups, grants, and projects within each county at the onset of the grant project, within the grant period, and at the conclusion of the grant project. Track and monitor collaborative efforts, tasks, meetings, workshops, and plans developed by the county coordinator during the project window. Host one collaborative event, workshop, or gathering that includes varied stakeholders actively participating in wildfire mitigation and education within your county. Maintain and update the CFFC GIS networking portal and collect GIS data to share with CFFC. We'll chat a little bit about this in a moment here. And conduct one presentation to the county's Board of Supervisors on the county coordinator's projects, outcomes, and results. Have just a few more here. To engage in one local community wildfire mitigation event or similar hosted by organizations or agencies within your county. Attend the fall 2024 county coordinator workshop hosted by CFFC. We are most likely going to host this event in Sacramento later this year. Attend a CFFC regional call for your region, Northern, Central, or Southern, once per quarter. We'll have more updates to come on the structure of these regional calls. To participate in one diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice training hosted by CFFC and engage with equity priority communities and communities at risk. This training will be hosted virtually, and we'll be sure to share out updates as we are planning this training for you. And then to submit quarterly programmatic and fiscal reports and attend quarterly check-in calls with your assigned CFFC grant specialist. So along with the quarterly progress reports that are required under the terms of this grant program, you are also required to attend a quarterly check-in with your CFFC grant specialist to review the work you reported on in your progress report and go over any questions that you might have. And then to meet the other deliverables as identified in your project work plans. These are the progress report due dates. These due dates are also available in your subaward agreements and program handbook. An important note is that failure to submit complete and accurate reports on time will result in the denial of advance payment requests. Failure to continue to meet this requirement may result in the termination of your subgrant. So please, if you foresee any delays in getting your payment request submitted on time, please reach out to your grant specialist with plenty of notice. And one of our big goals for 2024 is to try to complete site visits with all of our county coordinator grant recipients. We understand that this is a lofty goal, but it is something that we are trying to meet. So you will be coordinating site visits with your assigned CFFC grant specialists, and site visits are used to monitor your project progress. These events may include touring the project area and reviewing subgrant documentation. CFFC may also conduct a desk review. These desk reviews are completed to ensure that subgrantees are meeting the standards for management of the grant funds, and subgrantees should be able to readily produce expense documentation at the request of your grant specialist or CFFC. Here we have a screenshot of our GIS networking portal. So as I previously mentioned, one of the deliverables that must be met in the Northern Region County Coordinator Grant Program is to update your GIS networking portal. So if you don't already have access to the portal, we will be helping you get access to it so that you can start making edits to your portal. These county coordinator networking portals were created with the intention to fill information gaps between county coordinators and CFFC by giving county coordinators access to a shared ArcGIS portal where you can add and modify data related to wildfire mitigation practitioners in your county. This program will help the county coordinators to achieve your primary goal of the project, which is to build a census of all active wildfire mitigation groups, contact points, and collaboration efforts and projects. And in the GIS networking portal, we'll provide an overview of how many organizations are active within your county, and you'll be able to go in and update any contact information. And we do want this to be a resource for you as well. So you can also treat it as the contact database for yourselves, and you'll be able to access this data at any time once you have access to the networking portal. All right, moving along into our payment request process. CFFC's payment request process is all grant funds are distributed through ACH processing directly to the subrecipient's bank account. The county coordinator grant is conducted on an advance basis. For the first payment request, you will be able to request up to half of your award amount. And then for additional payment requests, you may submit a new one once you have spent down 60% or more of your previous payment request funds, and you have the required supporting documentation to indicate how the funds were spent. These are the items needed before you submit a payment request. You must have your previous progress reports completed for all previous quarters. You must have up-to-date insurance documents uploaded in Zoom grants, and a completed ACH and W-9 form also submitted in Zoom grants. Along with the ACH, you will need to submit a bank letter or a voided check to confirm the information within the ACH form, and proof of expenditures for the prior invoice period. As I mentioned previously, we are going to ask that you submit source documentation with your quarterly progress reports. So hopefully, as you're submitting your source documentation quarterly, it won't be as big of a lift when it comes time for your second advance payment that you'll have to put a large amount of source documentations together into a PDF file, and that slowly your grant specialist will be reviewing these documents as you submit them. And then the steps to submit a payment request in Zoom grants, you'll navigate over to your financial tab, select new invoice. You'll complete the form as it is. Here's a screenshot over here on the right of what the form looks like. You'll upload any source documentation, updated proof of insurance, and any other information needed for your payment request invoice. and then you'll go ahead and click the submit button. It's important that you do hit the submit button. Sometimes I think folks often forget this last step and they have the form already completed, but on CFFC's end in Zoom grants, we can't see the completed form until you hit that submit button. So just a quick reminder there. And then as a reminder, payments to subrecipients are dependent upon CFFC's receipt of funds from the awarding agency, which for this grant program is CAL FIRE. All source documentation for the County Coordinator Grant Program should follow the required guidelines that are outlined in the CAL FIRE project cost table. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen here so that we can walk through these items together. All right. If folks wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up just to make sure I have the CAL FIRE project cost table here. Awesome, thank you. All right, so in the CAL FIRE project cost table, this item is also included within your award handbook. So when you receive your award handbook, you'll be able to reference it for this table where the budget items are broken down as is the required documentation for each budget item. So for salaries and wages, the salaries and wages of employees employed by the grantee who is directly engaged in the execution of the county coordinator grant, and the required documentation for salaries and wages as a payroll summary of all the employees' time spent on the project, and must be provided with invoices requesting salary rate and wage reimbursement. Payroll documentation should also show a nexus between time worked on the project and wages paid to the employee after the fact. So any timesheets or similar documentation can be submitted to your CFFC grant specialist. If you have any questions on your payroll documentation, you can go ahead and send us over a copy of it and we can let you know if there's any additional information required on our end. Similar for the benefits, so employee your contribution and share of fringe benefits associated with employees who are directly engaged with the county coordinator grant. And then similar to salaries and wages, the same documentation will be requested. Payroll summary documentation showing wages and hours paid to employee and associated fringe benefits. And then for the contractual costs, I'll also go over a quick example that we have here in our presentation, but to go over it in this table, any direct consultants and contractual services necessary to achieve the objectives of your county coordinator grant. And the required documentation will be invoices from your consultant or contractor identifying expenditure, services performed, and period of services. We will require an hourly breakdown and how many hours your contractor or consultant worked, and then the activities concluded as they relate to the county coordinator grant. For travel, the cost associated with travel to and from project sites, meeting, etc., that are directly related to the grant project and must be considered reasonable and necessary for the completion of this project. For the source documentation that will be required is any receipts identifying travel costs, such as hotel receipts, rental car receipts, and mileage must be documented by either the employee travel claims that are signed by employees or vehicle mileage logs for vehicles owned by the grantee, and per diem must be documented by employee travel claims as well. Moving on to supplies that are used in direct support of the project are allowable. Supplies exceeding $500 per unit cost shall be documented to ensure procurement of supplies on a competitive basis and documentation of price analysis. Receipts identifying the item purchased, the cost, and the date of purchase will be required for source documentation purposes. And a similar pattern here, but all of these costs should be associated directly to the county coordinator grant project. And then there is equipment included in this table, but as I previously mentioned, equipment purchases are unallowable under the terms of the county coordinator grant. And then we have other. So other costs are ones that do not fit into the other budget categories that we just went through. These costs must still be directly related to the grant project. And invoices or receipts identifying the item and cost charged to the grant will be required as your source documentation. And then for indirect costs, the max amount of indirect costs that can be requested is 12%, and indirect costs are associated with doing business that are of general nature and are incurred to the benefit two or more functions within the grantee organization. And as I mentioned, that max amount for the county coordinator grant is 12%. Let me go ahead and swap my screen again. Okay. And then this is the example of the contractor invoice that I mentioned. So we will require that the invoice includes hourly rate, description of the activity completed, time spent completing the activity, and name of the individual completing the activity. And this will be updated or uploaded with your source documentation packets for any contractors or consultants that you hire directly related to the county coordinator grant. Next, we'll discuss modifications you may need to make for your grant project. Possible modification requests can be programmatic changes, budget revisions, extension of the subgrant term. Programmatic changes would be the scope or objectives of the approved project, key personnel, project location, or transfer of programmatic work to another party. Budget revisions are conducted if you are moving more than 10% of funds between budget categories. And then, as I previously mentioned, CFFC has put in for a master grant extension through CAL FIRE that has not been approved yet. So we will be sure to keep you updated if an extension of your subgrant term is possible. And then prior written approval is required from a CFFC grant specialist before making any changes to your project or subaward. And then for public statements, so in your handbook and your subaward agreements, there are some example public statements that should be included. The funding acknowledgements should be included on any public statements that you produce. And then any publications with logos will need to be approved by your grant specialist. All right, and then I know most folks just recently concluded their closeout process with their 21 county coordinator grants, but we'll just go over this checklist here, as well as for any folks who have not completed a closeout process with CFFC. But the closeout occurs when all project work has ended, extensions, if possible, have been requested. If you will be completing your project before the final quarter of your grant term, you must notify CFFC and your grant specialist, and you should request all final payment requests before the final quarter. And you will have your final closeout report in addition to your final quarterly progress report. Those due dates are available in the due date table that was previously shared and is available in your subaward agreement and grant handbook. A final budget reconciliation is due, as well as a feedback survey. And some final important reminders is to stay familiar with your grant agreement and original application. As I mentioned, it's great to become familiar with your subaward agreement and read through the grant management handbook once we get it sent over, and contact your grant specialist if you have any questions regarding any of the requirements outlined in these documents. Begin tracking your expenses and be prepared to submit your first payment requests, submit your reports on time each quarter, and always reach out to your grant specialist if you come across any questions or any challenges with your grant project, or if you have any questions about costs or scope of work project activities. And keep in mind success stories, as these will be due at closeout, and you'll also be able to share these out during your quarterly progress reports as well. Next, we'll be sharing some resources and how you can stay connected with CFFC. This is the CAL FIRE map. So the county coordinator grant is separated by CAL FIRE's northern and southern regions, which is this red line here right in the middle, right through San Joaquin County. As I previously mentioned, I am the grant specialist for folks in CAL FIRE's southern region, and then folks in CAL FIRE's northern region, we will be distributing amongst the grant specialists here at CFFC. And we also have our monthly regional coordinator meetings, and these are available on the CFFC events website. The meetings are also recorded, and the recordings are also shared in that event link on the website. And if you have any questions regarding the Southern California regional call, please feel free to reach out to Brittany Munoz. We also have our county coordinator monthly meeting series. We have our next one on May 21st, I believe, and we will have a member from the Fire Adapted Communities Network come and speak on what FACTNet is and resources that they have to share with county coordinators. We also have the CFFC virtual learning center available on our website. And then this is the CFFC events calendar that I previously mentioned. This calendar not only hosts CFFC webinars and events, but also events posted by local wildfire practitioners. This calendar is a great way to see what events might be happening in your regions. Our communications team also recently started posting webinar recordings under the past events if they're available, as I mentioned. And then if you yourselves have any meetings that you would like to get added to our calendar of events, there is a submission link at the bottom of that page on our website. And we also encourage you to join our mailing list, add your email address to the box on the bottom right-hand corner of our website to stay up to date on everything happening here at CFFC. And on our county coordinator webpage, we'll also have some available resources to you. And I believe this webinar recording will also be shared out after the call, which will also be a resource for you throughout your grant term. And that concludes our presentation. I'm going to quickly go through the chat to see if there's any questions that I missed, but if you do have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them. And thank you so much for joining us today.
I do just want to reaffirm the invoicing and source documentation process that we are abiding strictly by the project cost table provided by CAL FIRE. So I highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with that project cost table, exactly which documents are required, what the formatting is, because it will alleviate a lot of the back and forth and edits that need to be made to your source docs, and just allow us to get your payments out in a much smoother fashion if you submit the proper source docs. So definitely take time to read that project cost table.
All right, just looking through the chat here, Skylar asked if we had an idea on what month the fall workshop will be, and Julia answered most likely October or November, so later this year. And we will be sure to share out more information regarding your first payment request. And Roberta had asked if you're interested in extending your project, should they request the extension prior to CFFC learning more about the ability to get the extension from CAL FIRE. And I see, oh, Julia, you just answered that one. But you will not be able to get an extension on your grant project or submit for an extension until CFFC knows what the status of our master grant extension will be. And then once we do have a clarifying answer, we'll be sure to share updates on that item. Are there any other questions we can help answer?
Did I hear you say there's a prepayment or advance payment? But how do you do that without documentation if you haven't done it yet? Or did I misunderstand?
No, you did not misunderstand. We will offer an advance payment on this grant program. We will be reaching out shortly to let everybody know how much that advance payment will be.
Okay.
So it'll be similar to the way the last, I know that was a long time ago, the last 21 county coordinator grant operated, in that you submitted for an advance, you spent 60% of that advance, and then you could submit for the next payment after you spent that 60%.
Okay, thanks.
All right, some folks asked about this webinar recording as well as the slides from today's presentation. Yes, we will definitely share out this recording and the slides. As far as it being posted on the CFFC website, we will see what we can do on that one.
Yeah, I think I can get it posted.
All right, I just dropped a link to the county coordinator page on our website. So once Julia has access to the webinar recording and can get it posted on the website, it will live on this page. Any other questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you for this. I just spent almost an hour on the phone with a CAL FIRE captain because I got nominated to be the regional coordinator for our FireWise communities, and I don't know how I would have been able to do that without having this grant. So thank you.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
It was perfect. I was like, oh, I could charge it to that one.
That's great. Great to hear, Tanya.
Thank you.
Tanya, if you want to talk about that, Marika, Fire Safe Sonoma here, happy to help or answer any questions too as the regional coordinator for Fire Safe Sonoma in Sonoma County.
Thank you. Yeah, I've only been a regional coordinator for a couple hours.
Yay, congrats.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no further questions, I think we can go ahead and end this meeting. If any questions do come up, please feel free to reach out and we'll be sure to share out this webinar recording as well as the slides for your reference. And we'll be sure to send out the handbook.
I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
When are we going to know who our grants specialist is? Are you going to assign those?
Yes, we're working on that this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just have to know who to pester.
You can still pester me anytime.
Okay. Thank you, Julia.
And I'll just forward it along.
Or me. Any one of us.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah, we'll reach out and let you know. We'll schedule intro meetings.
Thank you.
All right, well, just thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on today. And as I mentioned, if any questions do come up, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. All right, thank you.